Okay, this part of our meeting I'm recording at home because I want to talk to you a little bit about what students should be doing when they practice at home. Parents, this is the daily practice video. This might be the video that your students don't want you to see because I'm going to tell you what to tell them to do when they're supposed to be practicing at home. If you're like most orchestra parents, you're very supportive and enthusiastic about your students practicing at home every day, but maybe when you bring it up, you get answers like, well, my orchestra music is easy, or I already practiced enough, or they said I don't have to. And I want you to know that daily practice is very important for every student, no matter their ability level. If any student is going to move up in the orchestra, is going to play at a higher level, or most importantly or especially if they're going to use their ability to play their instrument to pursue opportunities past high school, uh, they have to practice every single day, or no amount of talent will get them where they want to be. So I want to talk to parents a little bit about what you should be hearing and what it should sound like when your student is practicing effectively every day. We've given every student in the Dobie Orchestra a daily practice routine that kind of outlines um, some of the components of a good, balanced daily practice regimen. And you can have a copy of that from Charms, or I'll put a link to it right here on your screen. You can click there and go to that anytime you'd like. So, some components of daily practice. Your student should be working every day to produce a full, rich tone in everything that they play. And working on this tone will sound very repetitive. A lot of playing open strings, a lot of playing the same note over and over again, experimenting with their bow hold and the bow contact point, and things like bow weight and placement, and all these different things that affect the tone production. They should be working towards their best, most ringing tone in everything that they do. We have given out a détaché exercise. The détaché is the most basic bow stroke that everything else kind of grows out of. And we expect them and have tested them over the memorization of the détaché exercise because we use it every day in class and we expect them to use it every day at home. Every student, every player should play scales every day. We play scales in class every day, and we expect them to play scales at home every day. They might play scales with long tones, they might play them at fast tempos, but scales are what are going to build their intonation, meaning if they're playing the correct pitch or not, and scales are going to make them comfortable producing good sound at the bottom end and the upper end of their instrument's range and everywhere else in between. We've given every student in orchestra a set of scales that they can practice from, and we expect them to work on the scales every day to be familiar with all of the different scales. To put it simply, even if you're not a musician, every piece of music that exists is written in a key, and every key has a scale that goes with it, and your ability to play that piece of music or that work is limited by your comfort level with that particular scale. So the hardest music they'll ever play in the key of G major, for example, is limited and determined by how well can they play the G major scale. So any scale that they're practicing, they could do 1 octave, 2 octaves, 3 octaves, or even 4 octaves. Like I said, there's different styles for playing the scales. There's different things to focus on when playing the scales, but scales are an indispensable part of any player's practice routine. Shifting is what we refer to the movement from different positions to other positions on the instrument. Any kind of advanced music that your student will play is going to require them to be able to travel up and down their instrument's range, and shifting is the skill we refer to when getting from one to the other. There are shifting exercises that they can work on. They can also create shifting practices out of the shifts in any piece of music that they're working on. We encourage them to do this, to constantly work for accurate, smooth, and relaxed shifting so that they can learn any shift and then be able to do it successfully every time thereafter. Etudes are pieces of music that are written for a specific instrument to build and develop a certain technical skill. If your student has ever done the region audition process, you've heard these etudes over and over again, these difficult pieces that push them to focus on and improve certain technical skills. We use etudes in class for various things, for region auditions, obviously for our most advanced students, but also just different etudes and exercises that we pull together and use in class to develop specific skills, specific styles, and that should be part of their daily practice as well. Then there's the orchestra repertoire, the pieces that they're playing with their orchestra. Now, if your student ever uses the excuse, my orchestra music is easy, so I don't need to practice, they might be right about the easy part. Not all of the orchestra music is equally demanding, and not all of the parts within orchestra are always as demanding as the others. A good way to know if they're telling you the truth about this or not is look on their grades in orchestra and look for assignments with names like playing test or region test or chair test, and look at those grades. If there's any points missing from those, that means there's something to be improved on their orchestra music. But even in the rare case where they may know every orchestra piece perfectly and be in great shape on all of that, as you can see, orchestra music is just one part of a balanced and productive practice routine. So that's not an excuse to not practice or to skip out on practicing. And then other repertoire can include anything from solos they may be working on. It could include a small ensemble piece if they're playing in a quartet or a quintet with their friends and they have their own part that they need to be working on, or other special performances that are coming up that they need to prepare for. All of these different aspects and different things should be included in a complete daily practice routine. There are several resources that can help your student, that they're good tools for when they're practicing. A tuner and a metronome, 10 years ago that would have been something you would have had to go to the music store and buy. But now, with online websites and apps for phones and iPods and all of that, you can get perfectly good tuners and metronomes for free right in your home. We use the tuning CD in class every day, and the tuning CD gives students all of the 12 different pitches that we ever match or play with, but the sound quality and the balance of sound is in such a way that it's ideal for string players to help them get their instruments in tune. We use that in class every day, and you can download it on iTunes. It's actually called the Tuning CD. But if you bring or send a blank CD or an empty thumb drive to school, we'll happily put those tracks on there, and then they can upload it to your computer or your phone, or just put the CD in a CD player or anything like that. Mirrors. Everybody's got them. Here's mine. Say hi to yourself. This is my practice mirror. When talking about those things like the good tone production and the bow contact point and everything, so many things are easier when they can simply look at themselves in the mirror and see exactly how they're doing. Them looking in the mirror or you just looking for them, the bow, when it's on the string, should maintain the same angle of contact all the way from one end to the other. And if it's not, then something that they need to work on is out of line or out of whack. And getting in front of a mirror is the easiest way to do that. If your student's a violin or a viola player who can play standing up, they can just walk into the bathroom and stand in front of the mirror for a few minutes. Or cello players or anybody else, just have a mirror with easy access from wherever they practice so that they can check things like that. Smart music is something, it's not free, but it is online, and there's a yearly subscription to it, and there's lots of different resources and recordings and different activities and modules that can help students in their practicing, especially if they enjoy computer stuff and doing things online. If you have a younger student who is in orchestra in middle school or intermediate school, they may have a district-provided smart music account on their netbooks or elsewhere. And if that's the case, your high school student can use that same login to access the more advanced and high school appropriate things on smart music as well. Finally, a really good way for students to see where they are and see how their sound is changing is to record themselves and listen to it. Be able to hear their playing while they're not actively playing. And Charms actually has a recording studio that you can use to submit playing tests and things sometimes, but it also lets you go in there and just record yourself and listen to it if you don't have any other kind of recording device. You can use Charms for that. A big question that comes up with a lot of students and parents is, how long should we be practicing every day? How long should my son or daughter be practicing? How many minutes do I need to practice? And unfortunately, there's not really a magic number for minutes, and that's not a cop-out answer. That is to say that any amount of time spent practicing effectively and practicing the right way and practicing carefully is going to be better than any amount of time just spent practicing for the sake of practicing, just kind of practicing until you've met your minimum number of minutes. Now that being said, if your students try to use that quality over quantity excuse to quit practicing early or anything, we believe that if they follow the basic tenets of the practice routine each day, that 45 minutes is the bare minimum amount of time, for a complete practice session, and that an hour, 15, hour and 30 minutes is adequate to cover all of the things that need to be covered with a good amount of time for each one. There are more detailed suggestions on the daily practice routine, not only for the different items within practice, but how long to spend on each one. Now, for some students, just because of personality type and learning styles and all of that, practicing for an hour or two straight is not a good idea and not realistic. It's perfectly fine to break practice sessions up into smaller amounts. Maybe if you're an early riser, you practice 20 to 30 minutes before school. Maybe you do some practicing as soon as you get home from school and some later on in the day. But different practice sessions throughout the day in smaller amounts is a great way to make sure that you're focused through all of your practicing and that you're not pushing yourself too hard to practice longer than your attention span might be. So that's kind of the answer to how long students should be practicing. Now, to parents, I do want to just mention that it does make a difference where your student practices and sort of their surroundings when they're practicing. I mentioned a moment ago that there are tuner and metronome websites and apps for phones and things. I personally, when I practice at home, do not use any of those apps on my phone, simply because if I have my phone on my music stand, it's only a matter of time before I'm really not practicing anymore. And so I've just figured out with myself, and most students are similar to this, at least to a certain extent. If the phone is there, if the internet is there, if the TV is there, the practicing is not going to be as effective. And so any room in your home can be used effectively as a practice space, even if it's just temporarily set so that there's not much going on in the room other than practicing. And so whether it's a bedroom or the living room or the laundry room or wherever, if it can be agreed upon by everybody in the house that when practicing is going on, that practicing is going on, and if there's anybody else in the room, they're not doing anything that's distracting from the practicing, and so on and so forth. That little message there tells me it's time to wrap up. So I hope this is informative. I hope you will join us in encouraging your student to practice every day and to practice well, and we are so excited to to see what the orchestras are going to sound like when every single student is faithfully practicing and building that quality signature sound. Thanks for watching.